All right. Thank you everyone for your patience and good morning. Thank you for joining us for today's Human Factors Introductory Webinar. My name is Liz Mahalski and I'm a Program Manager for Nexus at Michigan Engineering. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. You are absolutely welcome to ask questions throughout the webinar by unmuting, putting them in chat, or raising your hand via Zoom. We truly welcome the questions and the interaction. It is now time to start our Human Factors webinar. Dr. Paul Green is a research professor and the leader of the Human Factors Group at the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute, and an adjunct professor and research professor in the Department of Industrial and Operations Engineering. His primary research interests includes driver interface safety and usability, driver distraction, driver workload, and related topics described in more than 300 publications. He teaches courses on human-computer interaction and the Human Factors Engineering short course, now in its 65th year. He is the past president of HFES and a fellow of HFES and CIEHF. He is a board certified human factors professional. I'll turn it over to you now, Paul.
Thank you. Looks weird. Sometimes looks like I'm looking at the sky. I'll just look at the camera. All right.
Well, and we can also see the presenter mode, not the normal mode.
Okay, great. So welcome, and I'm delighted to have the chance to talk with you this morning. And so the plan is to talk a little bit about the short course for maybe 20 minutes or so, and then open it up for questions. So, all right, let's see if we get the slide to advance. Do it that way. Okay, thank you. So first of all, this is year 65, believe it or not, of this short course. And I've been involved with it for 40 plus years. The course, as indicated on this image, emphasizes practice based on science. And a lot of you have practical problems you'd like to solve. The question is, what's the underlying science? The instructors, as I'll show you in a minute, are extremely knowledgeable. They're highly experienced, and I'll talk about a few to give you some examples. This course is unusual in the sense that it's quite intensive, and we try to balance both lectures and hands-on activities. Lectures are the largest number of hours, but we really work very hard on hands-on activities. It takes a lot more hours to create them. This is intensive, as I'll show you when we look at the schedule. The facilities are very special purpose built for this course and others like it. And finally, what we emphasize is not just technical material, but networking, meeting other people, because you'll find that a lot of times the information you need is not necessarily online, but rather some other person potentially that you met in the class who's working on something similar to what you're working on, but potentially in a very different context. So let me start out by talking about the instructors. And I got to click here. So here's some example. I believe this year we have about 13 people, including myself, who are teaching this class. There are a variety of faculty from the University of Michigan, from elsewhere, and people working in private industry. So I'm the leader of this. I do about 25 to 30% of the lectures. As Liz has already indicated who I am, so I don't need to say more about myself. Debbie Bain Davis has been involved with this course for many decades. She started out her career as a professor of psychology. She got promoted to a department head, then she became a dean, and then more recently she left to work at Oculus on augmented reality and has recently retired. Bruce Brantmiller is the go-to guy on anthropometry. He's worked at a company called Anthropology Research Associates, and just about every major study the military has sponsored, he's been involved with. Clayton Lewis is a professor of psychology. He's going to talk about software development, software design. Clayton Lewis is the inventor of the Think Aloud method. So I think that is just indicative of the kind of people we have. They know how to lecture. They presented in this course for most part for many years. They can talk about a variety of applications. Mine, for example, is automotive, but I've done aircraft work. I've done healthcare work. I've done some occupational safety work. So the ability to talk about a variety of applications means that we'll touch base with interests of a large number of students in this class. And all these people are very highly experienced at lecturing. There are a lot of times you'll find a college professor that can talk to a college student audience, but can't talk about applications. And those people just don't work in our context. The people who come to this class yourselves come from a variety of organizations. I thought about putting some real logos here, but like I knew I'd get in trouble, so I just made some artificial logos. The disciplines that people represent who attend this course is varied. We have people with psychology backgrounds, with engineering backgrounds, and some people who, as undergraduates, had nothing to do with this field at all and majored in history or English or philosophy or whatever. And that's fine with us. We're just looking for people that are interested in the subject matter. The degree of education varies. Most people have never had a formal course in this topic. Some have had some, and we occasionally have somebody who's had a PhD in the subject, and they said, well, I came to this course for a refresher. Some people are human factors specialists, others dealing with safety or something, and this is part of their job or all their job. The employers are widely varying. Just about any company or organization you can think of that's interested in human factors or ergonomics potentially will send people to the class. Applications are also widely varied. We're going to get people in healthcare, in motor vehicles, in aircraft and spacecraft, in power plants, and consumer products. If there's a human involved, then they're probably interested in sending somebody here. And people are from a variety of countries, predominantly US, but we'll get Canadians, usually a few folks from DCEIM, and from the folks in other parts in the world. I can remember a few years ago, we had like 6 people from the Brazilian Navy designing their first nuclear submarine. So the mix of the people makes it interesting. So the course has 5 specific goals or expected learning objectives. That's the terms that the educators used. So first, we want to try and give you a sense of the kinds of human factors problems that you face and others face. The critical issue here is not just what are the problems, but prioritizing them, saying what's important and what's not important. Second part is translating the science into practice. So this is a science-focused class. Human factors is a science-based profession. And so if we talk about the design of displays and, for example, being able to see colors of different, to tell if 2 different colors are apart, well, the question is, by what mechanism does human vision work? And then why does the results that we get come about? Third is to apply methods to the design and test of interfaces and evaluation of interfaces, because you want to improve usability, usefulness, and the safety of the things that you develop. We're also interested in talking to you about human factors data. Where do you find it? So, for example, people might be interested in anthropometry, human body size, strength, and range of motion. So where's the data, and what does it mean, and how do we interpret it? And finally, we're going to be talking about the technical material. You're going to leave this class, and you're going to leave with a large number of references, journal articles, conference papers, books, web locations, YouTube videos, etc., so that you can continue to learn about the material that we cover in this course. Here's a list of some of the topics. There are 33 lectures and a large number of other things that we do, hands-on activities. We have something every day. And each of these topics doesn't represent one lecture, but in some cases represents multiple lectures. So we talk about vision and displays. That's clearly an important topic. You're all worried about people fitting in, so we need to talk about human body size and how we measure it. People in the systems are making decisions, so the question is, how do they do that, and how do we predict the time and errors that people make? Some of you are doing evaluations, so we need to talk about how you design experiments. The range of experience in that topic varies quite widely, from people who have done it all their lives to people who have never done it all. So that's a challenge for us, but we're able to overcome that. Some of you are interested in websites, so we have some people whose expertise is on that. We talk about website design. Speech interfaces, we've got an expert on that. Automation and workload, we talk about that. For many systems, that are becoming increasingly important issues. AI is something new, and we're going to be presenting for the first time information on artificial intelligence, but we'll also be looking from input from the class on what you find useful and need to know. Requirements engineering is something that's not typically taught in a human factors class, but most of you are designing real systems and worried about requirements, so we need to talk about that. And finally, some issues about environmental ergonomics, focusing on vibration and heat and sound. All right, next slide. So the key thing is we like people to enroll for 2 weeks, but we realize it's not feasible in many cases. And the key thing I'm going to emphasize from the start is this is a pretty complex, detailed field. And just as you cannot become an electrical engineer or mechanical engineer or anything else, you're not going to be a human factors engineer in 2 weeks. But I think we can give you a huge start and really put you on the right path. So that's what we promise to do. If you look at the 2 weeks, the first week is kind of the starting point. So it's the basics of controls and displays and other kind of fundamental topics. The second week is a continuation of that, covering some things in greater depth and covering some additional topics, in particular related to computer systems, automation, situation awareness, and human-computer interaction in general. And people say, well, human-computer interaction is not what I do. But if you look at pretty much any system, it's probably going to have a computer in it. So the traditional thinking of human interaction is a keyboard and a mouse with a screen. There's a lot more to it than that. People say, well, gee, I don't know if I can do 2 weeks because it's time away from the work. But we argue that it's a good idea, first of all, for continuity purposes, because you will get to meet a bunch of people and keep working with them. There are also economies of travel because you have to go back and forth an extra time if you decide to do it in 2 weeks. And finally, people say, well, I really need the basics. And quite frankly, my experience has been that students who take the 2 weeks say, I really learned a lot, and I learned a lot of what I didn't know that I needed to know. And so that's why we suggest that people try to do it and one shot in 2 weeks. But we have people who will take 1 week at a time, the first week, and come back a year later and do the second week. And that's fine. So the days are long. We start at 8:30 in the morning and end at 6 o'clock at night. And then many evenings we have activities as well. Here's a typical day. Maybe it's a little bit more intense. This is the second day. And so typically our plan is we start out at 8:30 promptly on time. We have a lecture for an hour and a half. And this one happens to be on anthropology, engineering anthropology, which is anthropometry. Then we usually have some period of some comments, some information, some other things about the day. And then from 10:30 to almost noon, we're going to be actually showing you how to collect anthropometric measurements, how to look them up, and how to do other things to get the measurements. Doing anthropometry and using the data is more than just looking it up in the book, because you'll find a lot of times the numbers that you look up are not necessarily the numbers you want. You need to know how to do that. Then we talk about skills and the background behind controls, in particular manual controls. This is a new lecture. Then I'll talk about the design of controls. And then in the afternoons, we usually have some kind of seminar, hands-on activity, something that's more than a lecture. So in this case, the class is divided into 2 seminars, and you can either elect the one on symbol design or Fitts law, but not both of them. And then finally, we're going to talk about workshops. So we have some problems that we ask you to solve to apply the material that we present in class. So what we'll do is we'll divide you into groups of typically 4. Usually they're people you have never met before, and we try and create a variety of backgrounds and disciplines so that people see other perspectives than their own. And then you try to solve the problems. And then by Thursday, we have presentations from the class. This is roughly an hour, 2 hours every day during the first week. Then finally, in the evening, we'll have a tour that's optional of the Center for Ergonomics. So you can see that day is a pretty long day because it starts at 8:30 in the morning and ends at 9:15 at night. That's not unusual. But our view is you're here for a brief period of time. You really need to know this subject material, so you're going to do a deep dive on it. And in fact, maybe this is indication of what it's like. People talk about taking this class as like trying to drink out of a fire hydrant. And in fact, that's on purpose. We really want to give you as much information as we think you can absorb, maybe more than you can, but because people have different interests, we have to provide a variety of information to cover them. All right, move forward. All right, so I mentioned lectures and I've talked a little bit about hands-on activities. Let me explain what they are. And so there are a number of things that we'll do where when you're in these hands-on activities, you work in groups. We also do some things where we're showing you computer applications. I'll talk about them. Here's a picture of the room that we use. It's rather quite amazing. We've got about 45 or 50 workstations distributed around a center place where we present. It's position they can see the details. So let's look at more fun. All right. So we talk about lighting and lighting measurement. We actually give you some opportunities to do it. We have an anthropometry seminar, as I mentioned, so we're actually going to show you the GPM anthropometric tools and show you how to actually take the measurements. You may not be taking measurements on the job, but if you understand how they're taken, then you have a better sense of the quality of the data and what was actually measured. We're going to talk about movement time, and we have the Fitts law and other kinds of activities. We have task analysis and modeling methods and a lot of tools. We're going to talk about imprint, which used for task analysis, cognitive modeling. So I'm going to show you some examples. We may do something on Sieve, which is used for attention and display location. We're not sure which of two methods we're going to be using to look at physical ergonomics and reach and movement. There's some new tools and some older tools, and we're not sure. We're going to work that out. We also look at job analysis. So we're going to show you some real jobs that people perform and ask you to assess the physical difficulty of them. We do prototyping. Traditionally, we've done Visual Basic, and we'll probably introduce Figma this year. There's some tools used for usability. We show you how to use OBS. And the Army's developed Bolt. We tried to get Bolt last year, and we're not able to. We understand we'll have it this year. And if it's indeed what it lives up to its promise, we'll show it. We have a seminar on situation awareness. I talk about symbols. We have an assessment of workload. We use TLX, and we'll show you how to do that for driving. And then finally, there's this new activity on AI that we'll be doing this time. Here's some images that just show you the kinds of things we do. Here's something from a tour. Here we're doing the workload assessment. Here's kind of a group interaction. And finally, in the lower left-hand corner, you can see them doing some anthropometry measurements. The building that we used was specifically constructed for teaching short courses. And over time, the college has used it for other purposes, but its still main designated purpose is teaching short courses. Here you see a picture of the class in the room. You can see it's pretty full. Typically, we have 70 to 80 people the first week and about 40 the second. Where I want to highlight that we're in the Chrysler Center, spelled like the car company, not the Chrysler Center, or sometimes called the Chrysler Arena, which is the basketball venue, and it's on basically a different campus. So if you ask for directions, they sound the same, but in fact, they're quite different. We do not have a remote version of this course. During COVID, we did do it, but it's just not quite as good because a lot of things that we do are highly interactive. You're talking to other people, you're doing hands-on activities, and they just don't translate well into a remote presentation. The room is quite sophisticated. We have things like mics, so when people talk, we can turn on the local mic so that you can be heard by everybody else. We do have some stand-up tables in the back of the room because people realize it is a long time to sit each day, and we do that. And so people are encouraged to use them, and it works out really well. We do have some breakout rooms in addition to this classroom. And finally, we do have a limited number of AC power supplies. Along the sides of the room, we can plug in, but the middle, we have some tripping hazards. I'm trying to bring some things in. But if you do have a computer with limited battery life, then sit on the sides of the room, please. We also have wheelchair access. If there's anybody that has any kinds of difficulties, whether it's mobility or otherwise, please let us know and we'll make sure we accommodate that. We've never had any issues with it. In addition, all the materials will be put on Canvas, which is an electronic learning system, and we usually put it on there the day of. And we do that kind of just in time because we found that people will have questions, and invariably we have explanations for them. And we want to avoid the explaining it twice and, oh, I've already heard this kind of problem. So it works out pretty well. Here's a picture of what the notes look like when they printed them. We usually have about 1,300 pages or 1,350 pages that would fill a book. And then we have another 100, 150, 200 pages of handouts and other materials. I want to emphasize that these materials are for only those attending. There's some copyright issues. And if people end up redistributing, that creates all kinds of problems for us because the materials, because of the copyright agreements that we have in order to publish these materials. I almost forgot that for every lecture, there are notes. Some people use PowerPoints and we print those. I tend to actually create notes because they have more details. And so everything that you're going to see should be available. But if I have notes, I'm not going to reproduce the PowerPoints. Pre-course preparation is very limited. For one lecture, on skills, we will have a video we'd like you to watch. This is something we've never done before, but that material is highly technical and highly mathematical, and we found it's just difficult to explain if people haven't had some advanced information. So we're going to try this time to see if it helps people understand it. As indicated by my second bullet, don't bring work. You will not have time. Your supervisor might say, oh, I want you to do this at the same time while you're away. But the only time you have available will be maybe a little bit in the evenings. But we think you ought to set that time aside for tours and for doing other activities to work with people in the class. You'll find that valuable. We also have some issues with people having locked down computers. Students in the class want to communicate. They're working on projects together and so forth. And they tend to use Google tools, but we've also found some Microsoft tools are used as well. So if you have a computer that's locked down, you might want to bring a second computer or a tablet or so forth. I mean, yes, you can sort of do things on phones, but it turns out to be very awkward. And if there are tech support issues, we can take care of them. Travel planning. Ann Arbor is a short distance from the Detroit Metropolitan Airport, DTW. There are 2 airports in Detroit, but everybody uses DTW, the main airport. I'm not sure who flies to the other airport. Ann Arbor is about 40 minutes away. There are a lot of hotels nearby. They're all at the intersection of Plymouth Road and US 23 in this area. I've listed a few on this slide, and we have some materials that they'll be sending you that indicate them as well. A lot of people are trying to go to some other cheap place elsewhere, and you may save a few bucks, but then their transportation costs. Usually if people are staying at the same hotel, carpooling happens, or shuttles, which sometimes are not the most reliable, but carpooling happens. And because you're going back and forth with the same group of people, you tend to meet them, and that helps out with networking. So we tend to recommend that you not sort of do a onesie, but try to be at a place where other people are staying. It's not necessary to have a car because the fact that everybody's leaving and coming pretty much at the same time. And finally, at the end of the course, because you will have met and know people and they're all leaving at the same time, don't worry about getting back to the airport at the end of the course because there are always people leaving at the same time. You just carpool with them. It's pretty easy. You'll be very well fed. And people never go hungry at this course. Here's a picture of what a typical lunch looks like. Here's the menu. So we provide breakfast, we provide morning snacks, we provide lunch, we provide an afternoon snack, and there's pretty much continuous coffee and tea available. Dinner you have to worry about on your own, but Ann Arbor, because it's a college town of some size and it's reasonably well-to-do, there are a huge number of high-quality restaurants. So you will not be short of trying to find food to eat. So with that, let me just say that you should expect to have some incredible 2 weeks. I mean, for me, teaching this short course is just a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. We get great people. We have great presenters. The support is fantastic. It's a nice place to be. The material is interesting. And I always learn something every year from the audience and from those attending. So I put up here the contact information for the Nexus people, for me. And then just want to remind folks that the first week ends on Saturday at noon, not Friday. And we do that because so many people stay for 2 weeks and we want to just take advantage of the time that's there. So we have a half day of class on Saturday, and then week 2 ends Friday at around midday. And our recommendation is, given when the course ends, travel time, potentially the time to return the car, concerns about traffic issues, making sure you get through security in time, that you probably don't want to schedule a flight out either week any earlier than about 3:15. Otherwise, you have to leave early. And given all the effort and time and cost of trying to attend this course, it doesn't make sense to cut out early. So with that, I'd like to open this up for questions, and I can actually look up from my computer at the spread of the array of pictures of people who are listening on this presentation. So what questions do you have for me? You can just jump in, or there's actually a chat that I can see. Was my presentation so comprehensive that every possible question's been answered?
I have a question.
Hello, Eve Chen.
Yes.
Ask away.
Okay, perfect. I'd like to ask for the course material. It says on your slide that it's good for the course plus 2 weeks.
Yes.
However, if we download the lecture notes, are we able to keep that for longer than that amount
Yeah.
of time? Or okay.
Yes. Yeah, we just did that because people might say, oh, I forgot to, or I had some computer problems or whatever. And so that's why we extended past the class.
Okay, understood.
But
Thank
yes,
you.
everything you'll need, pretty much every morning, there'll be an upload of what you can use. And like I said, we do that because if we give it to them too early, people say, well, what's this? And it's like, well, I've actually scheduled a plan to explain this at the beginning of class. And so we don't want to kind of, sometimes that ends up like putting people off, and that's not what we want to do. Pretty friendly.
Understood.
And everything is first names, no professor titles.
Okay.
Other questions? Uh, let's see, what is the best status under which to enter the country for Canadians? I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's just you're a visitor. We like Canadians. We're not going to keep them out. Medical devices, yes. We cover medical devices, but I should comment that for any application, whether it's medical devices or aircraft, there's a reference to an IEC standard. And we don't go into details about a particular standard because then all we're doing is reading the standard to you, which is pretty boring. But what we try to do is for every lecture where there's relevant standards, we try to identify what they are and what the strengths and weaknesses of them are. I've been involved with SAE recommended practices. I've been involved with ISO and AS, American Society of Safety Engineers, and others. So I know the importance in the real world of recommended practices, which most people don't do. So we cover them, but we don't cover the particulars of them. Does that help, Brock? All right. He says, yes, thank you. Scholarship. No, we don't. Early bird discounts. Yes, they are available. Liz knows when they expire. And in fact, let me add one other point to the comment that Brock had asked about, specific standards. Part of the reason that we can't go into extraordinary detail about any particular one, although we tend to say a little bit about MIL Standard 1472, is because the audience is pretty broad. I mean, we got healthcare people. Yes, we have people doing power plants. And so if we go too deep into a specific standard, other than sort of what's its applicability to other contexts, we end up getting a few people very interested and the rest of the people find it not interesting at all. So our goal is to try to point out what in each document is broadly applicable. And in fact, that turns out to be often the case that, oh, this is a medical device standard. Oh, but by the way, it has great information on connecting devices up, about hose lines and so forth. So if you're doing that for aircraft or spacecraft or some other application, this medical standard is actually the one you want to look at. So that's kind of our emphasis. All right. Other things.
Hi. So I know you mentioned some people do typically like the first course 1 year and then they come back that second year.
Yeah.
How often do those like second week classes change for that second year in case that you missed something that was happening the year before type of a thing?
Sure. I would say that in any given year, the number of instructors who's changed is maybe one or two, right? And the number of topics that have changed is like one or two. So for example, this year, the AI topic is new, and I'm trying to remember if we dropped any topics, but we have changed some things. So it's very rare that you're going to see wholesale changes. They're more kind of evolutions of the course. And that's just reflecting changes in the subject matter that human factors people are interested in.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome, Susan.
Sorry about that. Took me a second to unmute. I don't have
Okay.
anything too crazy to add other than you will get a follow-up email after this where we'll offer a discount just because you attended the webinar. And you can dive even further into the information that Paul shared today on our webpage. And our customer service rep is happy to talk with you further as well. We are very, we really try to be supportive and make sure that you're going to have the best experience possible. So feel free to reach out to us with any questions.
Right. And of course, there should be still seeing my email and phone number, so feel free to give me a call or send me email as well. This course has persisted for 65 years for a good reason.
Yes, with respect to discounts, is there any group discounts?
My understanding is yes, and I think it's above 5.
Okay.
But CJ or Liz can clarify that. But I think you have to have 5 people.
Okay, thank you.
But I don't remember the percentage, but they know.
Okay,
Yes.
who can I reach out to for the details on that?
Yeah, so we will send you the email after this. There is a group discount. I actually think that the discount you're going to get for attending this webinar is higher than the group discount percentage. So we'll check that, but all of that information is on our website as well. We'll make sure you have all the links that you need. And when you get the follow-up email, it will say you will be able to contact our customer service rep from that email as well.
So Kelly jumped on late, and Kelly's asking about hotel recommendations. So here's my slide with hotel recommendations. And so as I mentioned, the closest hotels are near the Plymouth Road exit of US 23, and they're on the west side. And the ones that I would mention are Hampton Inn North. There's a DoubleTree North in that area, a Microtel and Residence Inn. And just make sure you say North, because there are also versions of some of these hotels that have downtown or south after them, and they're much farther away. Now, this is not close to campus. It's a ways away from campus. So if you want to somehow be able to walk around campus, then you probably want a hotel in downtown Ann Arbor. But then you have to worry about parking and getting out to North Campus, which is sometimes not easy. So that's my recommendation. And these hotels vary in their rates and quality, and I'll kind of leave it up to you to figure out which one. Will these images be shared? I assume there's some way that that can be done. If all else fails, just send me an email and, oh, there's a recording. Okay. But if you need them, send me an email. I'll send them to you. Parking. Parking is not so great because they put a library up where the parking lot used to be a long time ago. So there is a parking lot on Green Road, and then there's a shuttle bus you can take to get from there to the course. There's also some meters in the building next to the Chrysler Center where you can pay to park as well, but we don't have parking passes. So there is parking, But generally, that's why we recommend people go to some hotels, because they can either take the hotel shuttle or carpool in, and it makes parking less of an issue. Yeah. With relationship to parking, one thing that I've seen a few people do, which was actually kind of smart, was if they got in like on Sunday at some time at a reasonable time, they would actually drive to the Chrysler Center on North Campus just to figure out where things were, so that when Monday morning started, there was less uncertainty about the arrival time. We do try, like I said, we do start up at 8:30 in the morning, but the first day we'd like you to be there at closer to 8, because there's just some last minute registration and just kind of logistics that people need to figure out. And it also means that we really start on time, and we are pretty, we're very punctual. I mean, we will start on time within seconds of the desired start time. Most lectures will finish on time. A few might run over by a few minutes, but they'll run into like a break or something else. So we have flexibility there, and we will end the day on time. Oh, recommended dress code. We joke and say wear clothing. There's no dress code. I mean, it's a business setting, so yeah, you probably want to dress up reasonably, but no, you don't have to wear dresses, no suits and ties, no ties. We used to have years ago, the military were required to wear uniforms. No, we don't have that anymore. I should say that given the number of people in the room, there's always kind of variability in what the desired temperature is. So I do recommend people bring like a sweater or a sweatshirt or something like that. If not, and you're cold, then you probably end up buying University of Michigan sweatshirts, and this is not our tricky way to sell you university clothing, but that's what happens. So, just be prepared for the fact that it might be a tad cooler, just because the people that are too warm can only go so far in cooling down. And so we try to accommodate everybody. And it takes a part of the first day to figure out where the thermostat should be set. But that's an easily resolved problem. Does that answer your question, Susan?
Yes, I was just making sure. Sometimes you never really know what is needed. Is there anything for shoes, like closed-toed shoes?
No, we're
Or
not doing anything where we're going to take you in places where we're worried about that.
okay.
So just be comfortable. That's what's most important. So thank you for taking the time, and hopefully this has been helpful in preparing you for an exciting 2 weeks.
Thank you so much, everyone. You will receive a follow-up email as a reminder, as CJ said, with the 20% off discount code. So if you have any questions, please respond to that email as well. And we look forward to seeing you in Ann Arbor in July.
Thank you.